Advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Hey, good afternoon. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. We'll talk the law here on this fine Saturday afternoon. Carlisle Car Show, Ford National's going on right now. My brother's probably combing that place even as we speak. 540-0580. And my mom's cake recipe is up on RomingerLaw.com, so don't forget that as well. That's the cake that she claimed everybody would like. Not the fruit cake one, but the other cake one, the cream puff cake. Oh, boy. Whatever you guys want to talk about legally related, you know, I filled in for Durgan the other day, and we talked a little nonsense. If you want to comment on any of that, you're free to as well. Corey, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. What's going on?
Hey, Carl. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem.
I got a question for you regarding direct deposit or reloadable debit cards from an employer. Keeping in mind how identity theft and fraud and all that kind of thing is going on today.
Right.
Can an employer force their employees to take either direct deposit or a debit card?
I don't know the answer to that. I know you have to pay your employee, right?
Right.
Direct deposit, you know, here's the thing from the employer's standpoint. If you have to do a paper payment, there's additional expense on that versus what a payroll service, for instance, will charge for direct deposit and level of work there. So I would think that the employer would be free to do that, but I would think they'd have to, you know, reasonably accommodate you. The debit card quite often is not one you see unless the employer wants to pay someone who doesn't have a bank account. So I haven't seen any, but I've never heard of it being mandatory. But your question is, could it be mandatory? And I'm guessing yes, because you don't have to work there, right?
Right.
So the employer could say, hey, we pay by debit card, we pay by direct deposit. If you don't want to do either one, you don't have to work here anymore. Of course, if that was the reason they fired you, you might be able to get unemployment compensation.
Okay. I got you. Yeah, they're trying to force it on us in there at work, and it's been going on for about 2 years now. Now it's coming down to the wire, and the only thing I can think of is anytime you have another credit card in your pocket, that just opens the door for people to steal passwords and social security numbers and all kinds of other stuff, whatever it is they do.
You can always get direct deposit, though, and then it goes into a bank account.
Yeah, and then that has its whole other issues with it.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I understand your position. I also know, though, you know, for instance, the federal government's moving everybody on to direct deposit instead of checks because the cost of cutting a physical check is very expensive.
Uh-huh.
So that's really what's going on. The employers are trying to become more efficient.
Yeah.
All right, boss. Good luck.
All right, thanks a lot.
Yeah, I don't think there's a good answer to that, but I don't think there's anything illegal about requiring that. But if somebody knows the wage law a little better, I know I just looked up for somebody the other day. You don't have to give holidays. You don't have to give paid holidays, so you don't have to recognize federal holidays if you don't want to as a employer. Tom, you're on WHP 580. What's going on?
Good afternoon. Our business sold business gifts to a gentleman, and he's always been a slow payer in the past, but it's never been a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But then when we tried to follow up on it, here he has become deceased.
Okay. Well, now he's a real slow payer.
Well, we don't want to give the gifts to his clients, but how do we go about claiming this against his estate?
Okay. Two things. Number one, you want to figure out who has the estate.
Pardon me?
You want to figure out who has the estate, meaning if it's opened yet or not.
A woman's name appeared in the York Daily Record,
okay,
which we don't get, so that's why we never knew it. And I sent her a registered letter, but it hasn't been picked up. What
you want to do is file a notice.
She hasn't returned any phone calls.
Right. What you want to do is file a notice of claim with the estate. And so that's a pretty basic form that says, my name is, and the estate owes me X. And you file it at the courthouse, and it goes with the estate file. and then before the estate can be finalized with the courthouse, that's going to have to be dealt with one way or the other.
Could you say that again? I didn't catch that form.
A notice of claim. It's basically something that says, "Hey, you owe me money," but it's filed to the record, and that way the judge, before he'll confirm the estate, will require that those be dealt with. Now, dealing with it could be them disputing it, right? Or dealing with it could be them paying it.
Right, they haven't disputed it, but
no, you haven't filed a notice. But you haven't filed a notice of claim against the estate yet.
Would I do that in the prothonotary or registry?
You do that in the Register of Wills. You file it right to the estate itself. So you're going to need the caption number, et cetera, from the estate. If you look up the form, I think you can probably find one online at the Register of Wills site.
Okay, now I have one other. We never had him sign a bill because it never was a problem in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be a problem in this?
Well, it could be if they dispute it, proving the thing. But if you can show a course of conduct that he used to call us up and order things, and then whatever you prepared for him is obviously something that would be specific to him, it's going to be pretty good evidence that that's the way you guys did business.
Okay, well, we have mailing addresses that he mailed them to and everything.
Right.
So.
Yeah, because if I was, one of the ways we see in the old case law, if I used to deliver grain to the farm once a week, right?
Pardon me?
If I used to deliver grain to the farm once a week, take my truck of grain even if the farmer didn't call me and ask for the grain, the fact that I dropped it off and the fact that we'd done that for 3 years prior would be pretty good evidence that he intended to pay me for the grain, right?
Yeah.
So that's how you're going to prove the contract in this case. He delivered, you had the addresses. This is how you guys always did it. So you probably can enforce the contract.
Okay.
All right?
All right. Well, I thank you, Carl.
By the way, one caveat, if the estate is bankrupt or insolvent, that's not going to help you. And obviously, funeral bill goes first, cost of administration and estate tax go first. So you're going to be in the unsecured creditors category.
Right. I understand that.
All right, boss.
Okay. Thanks.
540-0580. Chris, you're on WHP 580 with attorney Carl Rominger. Hey, Chris.
Hi, Carl. This is Chris. I called last month and spoke to you about non-payment for a client that we had. We did a magazine for her.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Okay. Yeah, so the latest is we got an attorney, and he sent her a letter to cease and desist using the magazine until she paid us.
Mm-hmm.
And she continued to distribute the magazine, and we still haven't gotten, the remaining portion of the payment that she owed us. And he tried to file a court date
mm-hmm.
and have a temporary injunction set for the magazine to be distributed, but the judge dismissed it, or not dismissed it, but he refused to give a temporary order because he wasn't familiar with copyright.
Huh.
So that's kind of where we're at right now, and I guess she got a new attorney, and we're waiting. Still, we haven't received the remaining $2,000 that she owes us.
Why is so the judge just didn't understand the concept that you guys owned it?
Right. I mean, partial that we've created the works, and she's distributing it without the final payment,
mm-hmm.
and the fact that we did some research, and if we create a piece of work on a computer, we own the copyright until we transfer it over to the customer.
Right.
So we were trying to use that angle as owning the copyright.
Yeah, one of the other problems with injunctions is if you can be made whole solely with monetary damages,
right,
then courts are reluctant to give injunctions. So right. The judge may have also been kind of looking at it saying, yeah, I could enjoin her, but if she continues to use it, she's still going to owe you the money one way or the other.
Right. Now, late fees apply. I mean, it's in our terms
mm-hmm.
that we have late fees. I mean, all this time it's gone by, 2 months has gone by.
Yeah, that'd be part of your breach of contract lawsuit.
Yeah, and that's kind of how we're approaching it as well. The contract that we have with her is we don't have a written contract per se, but our terms that she's read over several times we're using as our contract, basically.
Right.
So that's where it's at right now. And being that she's getting a new attorney, how long, Well,
let me put it to you this way. Pre-prepared in any litigation over money damages can go on for a year or more.
Okay.
So it's not... You can't count on or bank on litigation ever.
Right. So
all right.
Pretty much there's no time.
Or no time constraints, and, people can keep things going forever and ever and ever. Not literally, but sometimes for years.
Sure.
All right?
Okay.
All right,
well, I
boss.
appreciate it. Thank you, Carl.
Good luck. 540-0580. Back after the break. Well, if you want to hear what Egyptian bloggers are saying about the U.S., quote, "I'm not shocked the U.S. has a very strong spy apparatus. I'm surprised they're careless enough to let it come out." And that's in reference to the PRISM system, which is the NSA's way of sucking up your Google, your Facebook, your AOL, your Microsoft. And that's not even what we're talking about with Verizon and Sprint and the cell phone access. So it turns out the U.S. government is, in fact, reading all your emails and sucking up all your phone calls. And, of course, they go, "Oh, no, what we're not doing, we're not reading them. We're not doing anything. We're just getting some metadata." But as of like 3 days ago, they claimed they weren't getting any of that stuff that we now found out they were getting. So, right, they're not doing anything with it. I'm sure they're probably taping this broadcast as well, putting it into some giant database. And, if I say words like plutonium and assassination and all those other little buzzwords, it'll all be flagged for further review by a human being. Or maybe just archived forever so that 20 years from now, they can try to figure out, which one of you listeners was listening when. Because if you're on iHeartRadio, I'm sure that connection through your internet service provider is being logged with the metadata. And now they have something called deep packet sniffing, where when the little data packets come out, they can tell what's in them and even reconstruct it later. So, welcome to the police state. And I know there's some people out there that go, "Well, who cares? Who cares? We need this for security." Benjamin Franklin said, people who are willing to give up privacy for security deserve neither privacy or security, or something along those lines. So keep that in the back of your head. Sylvia, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. What's going on? Sylvia?
Hello? I'm sorry. He said I was second. Question. A farm that was divided amongst 5 siblings, and the original driveway was kept by one of the persons, and my part is supposed to put a new lane in. Mm-hmm. Now, the easy solution was we'll go ahead and put a lane in. But right now, financially, we can't do that. I received a letter in the mail from the other sibling saying it was printed on an affidavit that he printed off the internet and got notarized to make it look really, really official, saying that the original owner of the farm is deceased for 2 years now. That right of way to his driveway is expired, and I need to get my new driveway put in. And two issues. Number one, the driveway. Can he truly tell me I can't continue to use that driveway? And on the plans, I have a shed. He has a shed that says on the new survey papers it said it's supposed to be removed. Now, I had my piece resurveyed. His shed is on my land, and he also put a sandbox on my land. And when I told him, okay, if you close the driveway, then you need to move that shed and that sandbox. Well, he didn't want to hear anything about that either. Now, like I said, the simple solution is go ahead and put a driveway. Financially, we're just not able to do that. I guess if push comes to shove, we'll just have to do it. But it's going to be about $10,000. Mm-hmm. If he blowing smoke, but he says that the deceased is he's been dead 2 years. Does he? He can't show me anything in writing, and I could show him where he told me in writing that I can, as long as I'm the one living there, I can use that driveway. If I would sell, then he'd change his mind. Right.
So you have in writing permission to use the driveway.
I'm sorry, say that again?
You have in writing permission to use the driveway.
Yes, I have in his writing.
The deceased writing.
No, not in the deceased. The deceased, it was a right to life clause, and one of the parties is still living in a nursing home, but the other one is deceased. And the right to life clause allows me to use that driveway until, I guess, both of them are dead.
Okay, so one of those people gave you the right to use the driveway.
Right.
Yeah, then I would think you have the right to use the driveway.
Well, how do I get him to move his shed?
Well, you got to spend money on a lawsuit, and you probably should be spending that money on a lane, right?
Well, right, yeah. I mean, why fight a dumb shed?
Right. So, how long has that shed been there?
Well, before the property was divided, he parked a shed on the spot, and then he thought the survey line was a different spot.
10 years ago, 5 years ago?
And then 18 years ago. But the property, 19 years ago, but the property was just divided 19 years ago.
I understand that, but now in 2 years, he'll be there 21 years and have it by adverse possession. So
and that's what I'm afraid of.
What you should do is grant him a license, which is write him a letter that says you have my permission, even though your shed is on my property, you have my permission to keep it there.
Okay. Can I charge him $1 a year to keep it there?
No, you could, but why? Just give him permission. It's called a license.
Okay.
And once he has a license to be there, it's no longer adverse, and that'll solve that problem in the meantime. Because here's what you don't want to do. You probably don't want to fight him on the shed and the other thing, and then cause him to try to shut you down on the driveway. It'd probably be better if you guys just reach a detente and live happily ever after until you can get your driveway.
Well, that scenario probably has already gone out the window happily ever after saying that. That's long gone. But I'm fully ready for him to shut the driveway down some night when I come home and I'm ready to come up. And
right.
I'm not going.
Well, if you've got permission and he shuts the driveway, then you can go to court and reopen it. So he's not the owner of that land, right?
Well, eventually he will be. But
right, but right now he's not. Right now there's a life estate in somebody else.
Right.
And they've given you permission.
Right.
In writing.
Yes, with the right to life clause.
I think you trump. All right?
Yes.
Good luck.
Okay.
Big mess. Lou, you're on WHP 580. What's going on, Lou?
Yeah, Carl. I have a house. It used to be 2 apartments. There's 2 separate doors, upstairs, downstairs. I rent 2 rooms in the upstairs of the house. And one of the people that was up there in the room, who's not there now, they moved, was wanted for child support, and the sheriffs are after the girl. And they came and talked to me, and I gave them all the information I had, let them go upstairs, showed them the room she was in. Her stuff's still there. I got to put it in storage. And they left. And then they come back again and bothered me again. And then the other day I come home from the store, and they're in the downstairs searching. And they're also bothering my other guy that lives upstairs. So I called and talked to their boss, and I said, hey, come on, this ain't right. And he said, I'll try to get him to follow up on the other leads you gave him and quit bugging you at the residence. But if this continues, is there anything I can do?
So let me back up. They were tenants of yours at one time?
It was 2 apartments, and now I just rent 2 rooms upstairs instead of renting it as 1 apartment.
Right, but who are these people?
The Dauphin County Sheriff's Department, there was like 6 of them, and they said they had a search warrant, but they never showed it to me.
Well, they should show it to you. But so the Dauphin County Sheriff's Department came with a search warrant for who? I mean, just for that area?
Well, for the whole house, for both the upstairs and the downstairs. And I said, hey, she lived upstairs. Why are you searching down here? Get out of my house.
Right.
And they're like, we got a warrant, and whether you like it or not, yada, yada, yada. So I didn't,
Well, you got 2 options. You got 2 options. One is if they did have a warrant and they had found anything illegal, you'd be in jeopardy, okay? If they didn't have a warrant for that area or were sufficiently limited, then their search of your downstairs would be illegal and a violation of your constitutional rights. So what would be interesting is to get a copy of the search warrant, which they have to file with the clerk of courts. So you could go through the clerk of courts file, find the date and time so you can get the right, search warrant and see what they were looking for.
Well, they're looking for this girl. They have an arrest warrant.
Oh, wait, okay. They had an arrest warrant. That's a body warrant. And they have a residence for her, right?
Right. That was her last known address was living upstairs there.
Right. So,
but they're not distinguishing that it's 2 different things. They're like, we got the warrant for it's a whole house.
Well, they have a body. If they have a warrant to search the house, or they have a warrant for her body.
Well, that I don't know. And all I'm trying to do, Carl, is get him to leave me alone and leave my other tenant alone. He's a good guy.
Right. So so they know she's not there anymore.
They know she's not there. I told them that, and I even gave them information to try to help them find her. You know what I mean? I mean, I've been as good as I can be.
They probably won't come back then.
Okay, I'm hoping they don't.
Yeah, they probably won't come back at this point. But yeah, if it's a body warrant and they have information that she's staying in the house, okay,
Yeah.
Like, how do you get to this room? You got to go up the stairs and through the front door?
Yeah, it's a separate entrance. It's cut off from the downstairs of the house.
Okay, so there's no way to get into the downstairs from her apartment?
No.
Except going outside and coming back in?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, then theoretically, you're right. They probably shouldn't be looking in your house without any probable cause to believe she's there.
Right.
But a body warrant's a little different than a search warrant. A body warrant lets you go look for the person, whereas a search warrant's to search a house for evidence of a crime.
Right. There's probably a body warrant because they're just looking for the person.
Right. And did you let him in the door?
I mean, well, my wife did. I wasn't home. When I
Yep.
came home, they were in there searching. And, I mean, they didn't go through drawers. They just looked where a person would be, closets. And
Yeah, that's a body warrant then. That's exactly what they were doing. And they were doing it in a restrictive manner, which is good to hear.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, boss.
Okay, thanks, Carl. I appreciate it.
No problem. Yeah, that's always a problem. I had somebody they have a wanted son who uses their house for his mailing address. And, of course, I told the mother until she stops letting him use it for his mailing address, the police aren't going to stop showing up. And it can get annoying sometimes when the neighbors keep seeing the squad cars out there and the special response teams knocking in doors. Just want to thank Carlisle Beer and Cigar, 770 Southwest Street, Carlisle, over by the Walmart, for some good beer and cigars. And tell you if you get a chance to stop over there. So if you're in Carlisle and you're looking for a good beer, a good cigar, and you're anywhere near the Walmart, and it's actually worth taking a trip over there just to see the cigar selection they have. And they'll also, if you have a particular favorite and tell them about it, they'll get it for you. Go to Carlisle Beer and Cigar over on 770 Southwest Street, Carlisle, by the Walmart. I'll be back after the break. Now, this is just my speculation. I have no source for this whatsoever. But I believe that the Chinese are probably the ones who leaked to The Guardian the U.S. surveillance program. And the reason they would do that is because obviously we're having the big summit with them right now, and they need to weaken Obama's positions. And, of course, that news article we just heard kind of plays into that. So, again, no source for this, just speculation. But someday we may learn it was the Chinese. Now, of course, what makes me really interested in this is, will they admit it, or are they going to set up some poor patsy? They'll probably get some guy from the CIA to pretend to be the guy who leaked it, a Private Smith or something, and then he'll go away to federal prison for life, and then he'll disappear in the federal prison system, and we'll never see or hear from him again because he'll go back to his deep cover of whatever it is he does, because we're not about to admit that the Chinese have infiltrated our security apparatus at that level. But I bet it was them. They're pretty good at that stuff. Mike, you're on WHP 580. What's going on? Hey, Mike.
Or Carl.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Good, brother. What's up?
Hey, Carl. I got a question about a DUI. I've never been arrested, clean driving record, no record whatsoever. And I thought, well, a lawyer's $1,000, and I thought, well, I'll go up to the public defender's office to find out if I'm able to get a public defender. She said, well, you make too much money.
Okay. And
so I wasn't eligible for that. But she looked at my application. She said, "You never been arrested?" Or I said, "No." I said, "I'm a respectable person." And she said, "Well, you don't even need a lawyer." She says, all you got to do is go in and waive your preliminary hearing, and you're going to get the ARD." She said, I'm pretty sure she told me it was a state law that first-time offenders get the ARD program 99.9% of the time. Now, for me saving money and not having the $1,000 at this point in time to pay a lawyer, what would you say on what she had told me?
I would say that's relatively solid advice, except for a couple issues.
Okay.
Number one, depending on the county, which tier? I'm just saying, but depending on the county, not just for you, but for everybody, there are certain flexibilities in how your ARD will be done.
Okay.
So it may be possible that if you're facing a 2-month license suspension in an ARD to get you a 1-month or 0-month suspension.
Oh, in other words, the lawyer can help in that.
Sometimes.
Okay.
Again,
well, I was told that I'm definitely going to lose my license for 1 month. My BAC come back 1.15.
Right. You just were told definitely. I don't know who told you definitely. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's not definitely.
Okay.
It's probably definitely if you represent yourself. Number two, there are times when you shouldn't take the ARD because the case against you is flawed. And it's so flawed that you can either plead it to a stop sign violation, which I did not too long ago, or you can roll the dice and take a dismissal, or you can take the ARD and then suddenly discover if you're a commercial driver that bars you from your commercial driver's license for 1 year, even though you may have been facing no driver's license suspension, according to the nice judge and district attorney who walked you into the program because they forgot to check if you were interested in getting a CDL. And if you say, well, who cares, Now, here's your other problem. Once you use your ARD up, you catch another DUI later on, it'll be a second offense, right? So it's good to know you didn't have to use it if you didn't have to use it. Number two, if you use the ARD and then catch a second DUI in your lifetime, you'll be banned from driving a CDL forever. Now, a guy your age, right, you don't sound like you're 12, you may be like, well, I know what my career path is. But imagine a kid who's 17 who takes ARD, and then when he's 21, he catches his second DUI, right? Mm-hmm. And now, when he's 34 and he decides that he wants to become a commercial driver because his uncle owns a company, he can't. So anyhow, the reason what I'm telling people or trying to get you to wrap your mind around is, yeah, a lot of the time ARD is going to be the appropriate remedy, but making sure that you have to use your ARD, that their case is actually sound, and massaging some of the details are something that the lawyer can do. Now, does that mean in any given scenario that I can walk in and go, okay, you got a 2-month driver's license loss, but I can get it dropped? The answer is no, not in any given case. But it all depends. Also,
let me ask you this, Carl.
Yeah.
I really respect you, and I really admire you for what you do. But you just seem like a really, really good guy. And what I was wondering is there any way that I could give the fellow that's running the show my number to him, and could you call me and talk to me off the air?
Yeah, that's fine. Or just call our office. Let me give you my office number.
Well, I already did call your office earlier this week, and I left a message, and nobody returned my phone call.
Let me ask. Call again and let them know you talked to me. You're probably in the queue to get called back here.
Okay. Should I call the Harrisburg office at 255?
No, that's an old number. Maybe that's what happened.
Oh. Okay.
That's an old number. 255.
Okay. What number is
241.
Right.
6070. Now we know why you never got a return call. I don't think that number goes anywhere anymore. Shane's shaking his head. Yeah. 241-6070.
Okay.
There's probably some little old lady with her answering machines trying to figure out what that was all about.
Super. Carl, I'll be honest with you. I believe that, I'll be quite honest with you. I mean, I don't know what could have went wrong with their investigation of the case. I think it was pretty cut and dry, to be quite honest with you. Probably
is, but your BAC, now here's a good example. About a few months ago, Lebanon County suddenly discovered that all the Good Samaritan blood tests were no longer valid.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all of them. Like 1,000 cases were affected, okay?
Yeah.
So lots of people pled guilty, and lots of people were entered into ARD on bad blood results.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing in Dauphin County. They recently discovered that the admission of the breathalyzer was unconstitutional. Notice I said suddenly discovered. And I can think of a guy I had, right? Who had an opportunity to plead guilty to a third offense DUI, and he'd gone to jail for a year. But because the breathalyzer suddenly had problems, I was able to negotiate a 30-day sentence for him.
Mm-hmm.
So my point on this is there's a lot of flux in the law right now when it comes to blood alcohol contents, as courts are finally starting to wrap their minds around, after decades of lawyers screaming this, by the way, that these are not scientifically certain numbers, that these are not this like magic number. And so what happened when our state legislature rewrote the DUI law in 2004 and said the difference between a 1.0 and a 1.1 is, or I should say a .999 and a 1.0 is extra months in jail or extra driver's license loss.
Right.
Those tests are not that accurate. So there's got to be some wiggle room, okay? So the question is, how big is the wiggle room? It all depends. Did they use a gas headspace chromatograph? Did they use a intoxilizer, which runs infrared light through a breath sample to try to measure the alcohol in there? Did they use a reagent test where they mix chemicals with the blood serum extract? Did they test whole blood? There's another one that comes up quite frequently, actually, is do they test whole blood or serum blood? I had a case where I said to the DA, I said, this BAC is not right. It's a serum blood. And they're like, no, it's a state police lab test. Those are whole blood tests. And I'm like, no, that's not technically true. The state police usually test whole blood, but if there's a coagulation of the whole blood, then they spin it and they have to do a serum test, but they don't provide a conversion number, so you're just reading the report wrong. If you actually go back and read the report, you'll see that it actually does say serum, not whole, in the fine print. Mm-hmm. So there's a guy who would have entered himself into ARD at the highest tier when really he should have been in the lowest tier. But he wouldn't have known how to read the report. He wouldn't have known the difference. And more importantly, the district attorney didn't even know the difference. Mm-hmm. So anyhow, what I'm trying to counsel you on here is I'm not trying to talk you into hiring an attorney, because here's the answer. Probably 9 times out of 10 on a first offense DUI, you could walk yourself into ARD. And probably nothing would change if you brought a lawyer along.
Okay.
But I do know, I have one other funny story that I like, which I took a girl up for ARD. And when we were leaving, she was laughing a little bit. She said because when she was sitting at the one table filling out the paperwork, there was another girl over there who was chiding her for bringing a lawyer. And she said, you don't need a lawyer, you can do this yourself. And she said, well, I like to bring Carl if I ever need any legal things. I bring him along. This is my first DUI. And then they compared BACs, which were magically the same. And then they compared license suspensions, which my client's was a month less than the other girls. And the girl said, how did that happen? And she said, well, I brought a lawyer. She shared the story with me, which I just thought was funny, because it does show, that's a great illustration how two people in the same court on the same day with identical BACs for first offense DUIs ended up with different license suspensions.
Okay. The Willow Grove Center did the blood test.
Yeah, Willow Grove, that's NMS, and they're going to use probably gas headspace chromatograph. They're fairly accurate. I don't know what their percentage accuracy plus or minus is off the top of my head. But for an ARD, you can probably rely on their number. If I was going to trial, I usually make them come because a lot of times they can't send the lab guy. And then we win because they don't have the lab guy. I got to go to break, boss. I got to go to break.
Okay. Thanks,
all right.
Thanks, Carl.
Take care, man. 540-0580. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580, answering your legal questions. Jesse, what do you want to talk about? Jesse.
Yes, sir. Question on people that call themselves sovereigns. I'm not talking about the American Indians, that sovereign nation thing like that. I'm talking about European descendants, born and raised in the United States, decided they wanted to operate much like the Indians, not subject to lots of laws. What does our government have to say about those folks?
About what? Folks who don't want to...
Pay tax is the biggest thing. They also consider, it's usually based on religious sentiment that we were born on this globe by from a creator's design, and no other man has authority to usurp control over them or whatever, that they just operate totally independently and roam sort of like it's the difference between wild pigeons and tame pigeons.
Like the free men or whatever they call themselves?
Yeah.
The answer is those are various political / quasi-religious groups that simply refuse to acknowledge the power of the nation state. And, of course, we have this other thing called the social contract, where with the idea that you didn't exactly agree to the structure. You were born into America, right?
Right.
You didn't exactly agree to everything when you got here, but right. You're now part of the social contract. It's a contract of adhesion. And so that's why, when Locke talked about, and I think Hobbes talked about the Leviathan.
Yep.
The idea is that once you entered into that social contract, you couldn't get back out of it, right?
Right.
So that's kind of, those people just refuse to acknowledge this social contract. Well, the problem with the social contract is you can refuse to acknowledge it, but whoever's got the bigger sword wins.
That's correct. Now, what I'm getting to is I was friends with a family that did this. They were Americans. They decided they're going to be these sovereigns. And they were doing pretty well. No driver's license, or, They didn't pay any taxes or nothing. So, okay. My friend, I knew him very well, very nice, sweet person. He's involved in a fender bender. Wasn't even his fault. And he wasn't far from home, and he got a ride home. Next day, the police came, picked him up, and said, "We're arresting you for driving with no driver's license." Mm-hmm. He's been in jail for 6 months, and he won't plead. Okay?
Right.
So they're saying you can sit here and rot.
You can refuse. Yeah, you can refuse to acknowledge the power of the sovereign, I guess, and then eventually, the remedy is either to, in the old days they probably just kill you. These days they'll just detain you until it suits their purpose.
Well, what I was wondering is why they're treating this particular individual who has absolutely perfect record. In other words, this man did only good, and then they get the aliens that come from other countries sneaking around here, and they seem hard pressed to keep him in jail for 10 days.
But he's refusing to avail himself of his rights, right?
Well, I didn't understand.
If he's just being held on driving without a license or some minor charge, all he has to do is make bail and he's out.
Well, I don't think he was even allowed. He wasn't allowed to do that because he wouldn't fill out any paperwork. He wouldn't
tell him who he is. So you can't place a guy on bail who won't admit that he is anybody. So my point on this though is he's not being treated any differently. If an illegal immigrant wanted to do the same thing, they'd be sitting in the same place.
Would they? So then they eventually learn who all these people are. If nobody has ID and says they're John Doe, which is the name that this prison has him under.
Yeah,
that's what. So then he may sit there and rot.
Yeah. But he's not availing himself of anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
So hey, that's one of the beauties of not wanting to participate. You don't have to. All right, but I got to let you go.
Okay, thanks.
We get the idea. John, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. What's going on?
Carl.
Yeah.
Hey, this is John from Mechanicsburg. I heard you a couple of times on the Durgan show talk about 7 years ago. I pled guilty to a second DUI.
Mm-hmm.
And for concealed carry permits.
If you plead to a highest tier DUI, tier 3 DUI. Second
Correct.
Offense, it's a misdemeanor of the first degree.
Correct.
Is a federal disabling for owning a firearm.
For owning a firearm.
Cannot own, touch, handle, hunt, use a firearm.
Are you kidding?
No.
Well, why didn't anybody explain that before?
They don't explain it to you. If you're an illegal immigrant, to go back to our friend there a minute ago, I have to tell you about the effect of your guilty plea on your immigration status.
Okay.
If you're a legal immigrant, I have to tell you about the effect on your immigration status. If you're a law-abiding American citizen who didn't abide the law, I need not explain to you how it's going to affect your Second Amendment.
Okay.
That is our court's ruling.
Is there a way to reestablish that? I mean, it was 8 years ago.
We have no restoration of civil rights in Pennsylvania because your legislature refuses to pass one.
Okay.
Therefore, you cannot fix it. You still use black powder guns under the federal law, however.
Is there a lobbying group or someone that I can support?
NRA and the Sportsmen.
I'm an NRA member.
And the Allegheny Sportsmen's and all those different statewide organizations. But there's just no taste for it in the legislature, right? Because we're being soft on criminals if we do that. We're going to let crazy people have guns. They'll go to movie theaters.
Yeah, you'd think. I just thought there would be a period. You know what I mean? Maybe.
The federal government has a law that would allow you to get your federal prohibition lifted. Okay.
Okay.
If the state won't restore your civil rights, you can apply to the ATF. However, every year Congress defunds that, and therefore there's nobody to apply to, and ATF won't take action on your application because they're prohibited by Congress from doing. Even though the law says you have a recourse, Congress says we won't fund it, therefore there's no effective way to access the law. The courts tried to craft a remedy, and the United States Supreme Court said, nope, can't do that. No love from the courts on this one. All right, my friend, good luck.
Okay, thank you.
540-0580, Carl Rominger here. Just want to remind you guys, Wednesday, June 12th, from 4 to 7 p.m., Harrisburg Beer and Cigars over on 3842 Union Deposit Road near the Lowe's. is having Sam Licia, creator of the famous Nubs and Canes, to launch his next masterpiece. And Jack Turano will be there as well. And it's going to be Licia Cigars. So I got an event deal there. 10% off a single box and 15% off 2 boxes. Buy 7 cigars, get 2 free. You get some free T-shirts and swag. So it's well worth a trip over there. That's going to be June 12th over by the Lowe's area where Harrisburg Beer and Cigar is. Again, I strongly recommend those guys. Very nice. And they have an amazing walk-in humidor there. Tony, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. What's going on, Tony?
Hi, Carl. I lost some siding back in March.
Okay.
On some from the windstorm, and I called my insurance agency. The guy said, get an estimate, and he knew of a company that he thought was reputable. He sent them out, and I had, I think, 2 other estimates done. The guys, when they got there, asked me if I had, 6 or 7 pieces of siding off. If I wanted them to just seal it up in case it rained before I got it re-sided, it would keep it dry. So I signed an emergency work order. They basically put a plastic tarp up and screwed some furring over the top of it. It took them about 20 minutes. I ended up going with another contractor to have the work done because it gave me a much lower estimate. 2 months later, I get a bill from these guys for $730.
Okay.
And I'm wondering what, when I talked to my insurance agent about it, he said, "Oh, that's BS. Send them what you think is fair, and I'll make sure it's settled or whatever."
Uh-huh.
And I'm thinking, I don't know if
send them what you think is fair, and write on the check full satisfaction and accord on the memo line. All right. Got to go to break. 540-0580. Carl Rominger here. See you in a minute.